The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber, with its sweeping crystalline arches and floating holograms, fell silent as the distress signal cut through all channels. Even the ever-present hum of quantum computers seemed to dim in respect for the terror in the Lumini ambassador's voice. "This is Ambassador Nixel of the Lumini Confederation. Our outer colonies have fallen. The Void Scarabs. They're consuming everything. Not just resources, entire worlds. Our defenses." Static crackled through the transmission. "Our defenses are useless. They've adapted to our photonic barriers. Billions are already. Please. Anyone." Senior diplomat Carl's luminescent tendrils twisted in distress as he watched the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations squirm in their seats. The Moravian delegate, their chrome-plated exoskeleton gleaming, spoke first. "The Void Scarabs have never been stopped. Their hive mind adapts to any defense we devise. To intervene would risk drawing their attention to our own worlds." The Moravian's mechanical voice carried a note of rehearsed regret. Carl's fourth heart clenched as, one by one, the greatest civilizations in known space found diplomatic ways to say no. The quantum collective cited probability matrices showing the futility of intervention. The Silicon Concordat declared it outside their algorithmic jurisdiction. Even the warrior philosophers of the Stellar Commonwealth spoke of tactical unfeasibility. "Pathetic," Carl muttered, his inner thoughts accidentally broadcasting through his species' natural telepathic field. Several nearby delegates shot him disapproving glances. The chamber's central hologram updated, showing the scarabs advance through Lumini space. Their massive hive ships appeared as dark wounds against the stellar backdrop, each one larger than a small moon. The Lumini's beautiful bioluminescent cities, visible from space as webs of living light, winked out one by one. Carol accessed his neural interface, scanning through centuries of contact records. There had to be someone, some species with the combination of technical capability and what was the term? Backbone. The Council database scrolled past his inner eye. Species after species, all advanced, all peaceful, all categorized by their contributions to art, science, and philosophy. Then his search hit a quarantine flag. "Access restricted. Warning." "Approach with caution," flashed in his mind. Carl dug deeper, overriding the warning with his diplomatic credentials. The file opened, revealing assessment reports on a species from a relatively obscure spiral arm. "Humans. Too aggressive for their technological level," one report noted. "Retained primitive combat instincts despite achieving spaceflight," another warned. "Concerning tendencies toward fighting against overwhelming odds," a third declared. Carl's tendrils straightened as he read further. Humans had something the reports called special forces, warriors who specifically trained to operate behind enemy lines, against superior numbers. They still practiced hand-to-hand combat, maintaining their species' ancient killing techniques despite having energy weapons. Most interestingly, they had a concept called search and rescue, dedicating resources specifically to helping those in danger, even at great risk to themselves. "Speaker," Carl called out, his voice carrying across the chamber. The ancient AI that moderated council sessions turned its attention to him. "I request emergency contact with Earth's United Defense Force." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. The Moravian delegates' mechanical limbs clicked in agitation. The humans, they're barely past their first colonial phase. Their ships still use physical ammunition. For Void's sake. "Precisely," Carl replied, his tendrils now rippling with purpose. "The scarabs adapt to energy weapons, quantum phasing, and photonic barriers. But when was the last time they faced projectile weapons or close-quarters combat specialists?" "You can't be serious," the Silicon Concordat's representative buzzed. "They're violent primitives. Their diplomatic AI hasn't even passed basic empathy protocols." "They don't use diplomatic AIs," Carl corrected, allowing himself a small surge of satisfaction. "They send actual humans to negotiate. Face to face. like their ancestors did. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. A species that maintained its killing edge while developing spaceflight technology. A culture that combined advanced engineering with what they called gut instinct. A military that still trained for physical combat in an age of drone warfare. As the council debated, another Lumini colony went dark on the hologram. Karel had made his decision. Sometimes, when facing monsters, you needed a species that remembered how to fight them. It was time to call the killers. The council delegation materialized in Earth's orbital station, expecting savages. Instead, they found Admiral Jack Morrison drinking coffee while watching Earth rotate below through the station's observation deck. His salt and pepper hair and the laugh lines around his eyes spoke of a man who'd seen enough combat to know when to smile and when to fight. "Welcome to Orbital Command," Morrison said, not turning from the window. "Beautiful view, isn't it? Reminds us what we're protecting." He took another sip from his mug, which bore the faded text, "Marines do it with precision." Karel's diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for this casual reception. The reports suggested humans would display immediate aggression, or, at minimum, suspicious hostility. The Admiral's relaxed demeanor was unsettling. "Admiral Morrison," Karel began, his tendrils twisting nervously, "we come with grave news." "The Lumini situation," Morrison interrupted, finally turning to face them. "We've been monitoring their distress calls for the past 6 hours, just waiting for someone to ask for help." His eyes, sharp despite their warmth, studied the alien delegation. "Took you folks long enough." The Moravian delegate's chrome exoskeleton clicked in surprise. "You knew, and you didn't intervene." Morrison's smile carried a predatory edge. "Council regulations, remember. Humans aren't supposed to initiate contact with non-aligned species. Something about us being too aggressive." He shrugged. "But now that you're here officially asking." He tapped his neural interface, and the observation deck's windows transformed into tactical displays. The council representatives gasped as they saw the scale of human military preparation already underway. Across Earth's orbital network, warships were pulling out of their berths. Not the sleek, A-driven vessels the council used, but bristling battleships with railgun turrets and missile pods. Marine dropships swarmed like angry wasps around larger troop carriers. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," Morrison called out. "Status report." A hologram materialized, showing a muscular man with a scar across his left cheek. "First Marine Division is combat ready, sir. All platoons report green status. Special Forces teams echo through hotel are prepped for deep insertion. Just give us targets." "Colonel Bradley," Morrison queried. Another hologram. A dark-skinned woman with close-cropped hair. "Fighter wings are fueled and armed. We've loaded the special tungsten penetrators you requested. If these bugs have adaptive shields, let's see them adapt to good old-fashioned kinetic energy." The Silicon Concordat's representative buzzed in alarm. "Physical ammunition. Projectile weapons. These are Extinction-era technologies." Morrison's smile widened. "Exactly. Your reports say these scarabs adapt to energy weapons. When's the last time they faced a railgun round moving at relativistic speeds, or Marines with combat knives?" "Combat knives." Karel's translator struggled with the concept. "You still use bladed weapons." "Among other things," Morrison said. He turned to a new hologram showing the Lumini system. "Here's our plan. The fleet will punch through their outer defenses using massed kinetic strikes. While their hive mind is busy adapting to that, we drop our Marines behind their lines. The scarabs think like a collective, but humans." He chuckled. "We've perfected the art of chaos." A new alert flashed across the displays. Morrison read it and nodded. "First wave of ships is ready. We can deploy in 30 minutes. 30 minutes. The Moravian delegate's voice scaled up several octaves. "The council hasn't approved this intervention." Morrison's expression hardened. "With all due respect to the council, someone out there is asking for help. Where I come from, that's all the approval we need." He finished his coffee and set the mug down with deliberate care. Humanity spent thousands of years developing the art of warfare. Then we spent thousands more learning when not to use it. Right now, this is exactly why we kept these skills sharp. He turned to Carl. You came to us because we're killers. Because we remember how to fight. But that's not what makes humans special, Ambassador. What makes us special is we know exactly when to fight, when innocent lives are at stake. The tactical displays lit up as hundreds of human warships broke orbit. Morrison's eyes reflected their engine flares. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a rescue mission to lead. You're welcome to observe from here, or you can join us on the flagship. Either way, you're about to see why some species shouldn't forget their killer instinct. The council delegation watched in stunned silence as humanity went to war. The human fleet burst from hyperspace into a scene from nightmares. Void scarab hive ships blotted out the stars, their chitinous hulls absorbing light from the lumini-sun. Each vessel resembled a twisted cathedral built by insane architects, all sharp angles and predatory curves that hurt the eye to follow. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus, Mad Dog Rodriguez, stood in the dropship bay of the UDF Challenger, watching the tactical display with a wolfish grin. His Marines crowded around him, their powered armor humming with barely contained energy. Would you look at that? He whispered, genuine awe in his voice. They're beautiful in a terrifying sort of way. He turned to his troops, eyes gleaming. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you brought your bug spray. A ripple of laughter ran through the Marine contingent. The council observers, watching from their designated safe zone, couldn't comprehend the humans' apparent joy at facing such horror. They're laughing, Carl transmitted to his fellow delegates. In the face of extinction-level threats, these humans are laughing. The first scarab attack came without warning. Energy beams lanced out from the high ships, their purple-black radiance designed to disintegrate matter at the molecular level. The council delegates held their breath, expecting to witness the immediate destruction of the primitive human fleet. Instead, they watched in amazement as human ships performed maneuvers that defied both physics and sanity. The UDF vessels split apart in a chaotic yet coordinated dance, their formations dissolving into what looked like complete disorder, but somehow maintained perfect spacing. Reading their attack patterns, called out Lieutenant Sarah Brooks from her tactical station. Just like we thought. They're targeting where their computers predict we should be, not where we are. Guess they've never dealt with pilots crazy enough to fly manual. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled over the fleet-wide channel. All ships, execute Battle Plan Charlie. Show these bugs why humans still train without combat computers. Rodriguez watched as the human fleet's response began. Railguns spooled up, their electromagnetic whine building to a crescendo. Missile pods opened like deadly flowers turning toward the sun. Look at their formations, Rodriguez noted to his Marines, using the moment as a teaching opportunity. Perfect geometric patterns. Beautiful. Predictable. They fight like a supercomputer playing chess. His grin turned predatory. Too bad we're about to flip the board. The first salvo of human weapons took the scarabs completely by surprise. Relativistic railgun rounds, their tips composed of specially designed penetrator materials, smashed through energy shields calibrated to deflect plasma and laser fire. Ripple-fired missiles, their paths seemingly random, found gaps in the scarabs' perfect formations. A nearby ensign monitoring scarab communications reported with barely contained excitement. Sir, their hive mind is going crazy. They keep repeating the same phrase. Invalid combat doctrine detected. Rodriguez laughed out loud. Invalid combat doctrine. Oh, they ain't seen nothing yet. He keyed his command channel. All Marine units, prep for drop. We're going to show these bugs what real chaos looks like. In the dropship bay, hundreds of Marines checked their weapons one last time. Unlike the energy rifles used by most species, human weapons remained stubbornly physical. Railgun rifles, shotguns loaded with specialized penetrator shells, and even the combat knives magnetized to their armor. all designed to bypass advanced shields and strike at the physical form beneath. "They think we're primitives," Rodriguez addressed his troops, pride evident in his voice. "They look at our weapons, our ships, our tactics, and they see something obsolete. But you know what we really are." He paused, making eye contact with each Marine in turn. "We're the galaxy's immune system. Sometimes you need something ancient, something primal, to fight an infection." The tactical display updated, showing a gap in the Scarab fleet's formation. Their perfect geometry was beginning to show cracks as they tried to adapt to human battle tactics. "That's our window," Rodriguez announced, hefting his own railgun rifle. "Time to remind the galaxy why humanity never forgot how to kill." He triggered the bay's warning klaxon, its deep sound resonating through the bones of every being present. "Mount up, Marines. We've got some bugs to stomp and civilians to save." As the dropships powered up, Carol finally understood why humans still trained in personal combat. Sometimes the most advanced solution wasn't the right one. Sometimes you needed killers who remembered the old ways. The dance of death was just beginning. Commander Ashley Williams stood at her tactical station aboard the UDF Normandy, her fingers dancing across holographic controls as she orchestrated what the Council observers could only describe as controlled mayhem. The main view screen showed dozens of Void Scarab ships attempting to trap the human fleet in a three-dimensional encirclement. "Predictable," she muttered, a slight smile playing across her features. "Echo Squadron, execute roll pattern Delta. Hammer Group, prepare for close-range engagement on my mark." Carell watched in fascination as human ships deliberately broke formation, each vessel moving in what seemed like random patterns. The Scarab fleet's energy weapons lashed out, missing their targets by mere meters as human pilots relied on instinct and training rather than computer-predicted evasion paths. "Their shield configuration is shifting," reported Lieutenant James Cooper from the sensor station. "They're adapting to our railgun velocities." Williams nodded, her expression turning predatory, just as we expected. Switching to scattershot protocols, her hands flew across the controls. "All ships, load canister rounds. Let's see them adapt to thousands of smaller impacts instead of single large ones." The human fleet's railguns spoke again, but this time each round split apart mid-flight, becoming clouds of hypervelocity projectiles. The Scarabs' adjusted shields, optimized to deflect single large impacts, struggled against the shotgun-like spread of smaller penetrators. "Look at that," Williams said, pointing to a tactical display showing a Scarab ship's shield harmonics. "They're trying to generate thousands of small shield bubbles to counter each projectile. The power drain is enormous." A massive Scarab vessel, its hull resembling a twisted cathedral of chitin and metal, moved to intercept the Normandy. Its weapon ports glowed with purple-black energy, charging for what should have been a killing blow. Williams didn't even flinch. Spring the trap. Hidden among the debris of previous exchanges, human stealth drones activated their payloads. Not energy weapons or smart missiles, but simple clouds of metallic chaff. Countless strips of radar-reflective material that played havoc with the Scarab's targeting systems. "Status report from the captured drone's data analysis," Cooper called out. "Their targeting systems are completely dependent on energy signature tracking. They literally don't know how to handle physical obstacles." The Scarab vessel fired, its energy weapons dispersing harmlessly through the chaff cloud. The Normandy's response was immediate and devastating. Multiple railgun turrets fired simultaneously, their synchronized impacts hammering the same shield section. Physical laws couldn't be adapted to. The kinetic energy had to go somewhere. "Breach confirmed," Williams announced with professional satisfaction. "All ships, concentrate fire on successful penetration points." Old-school bracketing, just like naval artillery. Carol's tendrils twisted in amazement as he watched the human fleet coordinate their assault. Each ship's fire control officer adjusted their aim based on observed impacts, much like their ancient seafaring ancestors had done. The Scarabs, for all their advanced technology, had no counter for such seemingly primitive but effective techniques. "We're receiving a transmission from the ground teams," Cooper reported. "Colonel Rodriguez's Marines have engaged Scarab ground forces. They're reporting similar results. The enemy's personal shields are useless against physical ammunition." Williams allowed herself a small chuckle. Bet they never expected to face buckshot in space-age combat. Her expression turned serious as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Here comes their counterattack. Battle group forming up at coordinates 227 by 184. The Scarab fleet was reorganizing, their hive mind processing the new tactical data and attempting to formulate a response. Their next formation was looser, less geometrically perfect, as they tried to adapt to human unpredictability. "They're learning," Williams observed, "but they're learning the wrong lessons. They think we're just being random." She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, prepare for close action combat. Time to show them the difference between chaos and controlled aggression." The human fleet began moving into what looked like an ancient naval battle line, but three-dimensional and with variations that would have been impossible in sea combat. Williams' hands never stopped moving across her tactical controls, conducting the symphony of controlled violence. "You know what their biggest weakness is?" she asked Carl, who had been silently observing. "They fight like machines pretending to be insects. We fight like predators who learned to build spaceships. Evolution spent millions of years perfecting our combat instincts. You can't program that into a hive mind." As if to prove her point, another Scarab vessel succumbed to concentrated railgun fire, its perfect shields useless against humanity's imperfect but effective weapons. The path to the Lumini homeworld was opening, one dead bug at a time. The dropship's bay doors opened to reveal the burning skyline of Luminox Prime. The Lumini capital city's bioluminescent towers flickering like dying stars. Staff Sergeant Emma Valkyrie Thompson stood at the edge, magnetic boots keeping her anchored as she surveyed the battlefield below. "Remember your training," she called out to her platoon over the tactical net. "These bugs think in straight lines. We don't." She checked her shotgun's ammunition counter, loaded with specially designed fletchette rounds. "Watch for civilians and stay frosty." The dropship rocked as nearby explosions lit up the twilight sky. Through gaps in the smoke, Thompson could see Scarab ground forces moving through the streets in perfect geometric formations, their chitinous armor gleaming with an unnatural sheen. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced. "Hot zone ahead." Scarabs have heavy presence in the target area. Thompson grinned behind her visor. "Wouldn't be fun otherwise." She turned to her platoon. "First squad, you're with me on civilian evacuation. Second squad, set up crossfire positions. Third squad, you're our mobile reserve." Questions? There were none. Good. Time to show these bugs why humans still train for close combat. They dropped into hell. The first engagement came seconds after landing. A Scarab patrol rounded a corner, their energy weapons already charging. But while the aliens moved with mechanical precision, Thompson's Marines flowed like water through the urban terrain, using debris and buildings as cover. "Watch this," Thompson muttered, pulling a simple metal sphere from her belt. She rolled it toward the Scarabs. Not a high-tech explosive, but a cluster of ball bearings wrapped around a small charge. The alien sensors, calibrated for energy weapons and exotic particles, didn't even register it as a threat. The blast scattered hundreds of supersonic metal spheres through their formation. Scarab personal shields, designed to stop plasma bolts and laser fire, offered no protection against simple physical impacts. "Old school works just fine," Thompson announced as her Marines pushed forward. "Cole, Martinez, get those civilians out of the building to your 3 o'clock. Jackson, covering fire." A group of Lumini civilians watched in amazement as the humans operated. They had expected more advanced rescuers. Instead, they got warriors who moved like their planet's ancient predators, all controlled aggression and fluid grace. "This way." Thompson called out to the civilians, her armor's universal translator converting her words to bioluminescent pulses the Lumini could understand. "We've got safe zones established in the underground transit stations." A young Lumini, their bioluminescence flickering with fear, approached Thompson. "Why do you smile when you fight?" they asked through the translator. Thompson paused, considering how to explain it to a member of a purely peaceful species. "Because we're good at it," she finally answered, "and we're using that skill to help people who need it." The moment was interrupted by multiple contact warnings. Her helmet display showed Scarab forces converging on their position from 3 directions. "They're trying to box us in," reported Corporal Lee from his overwatch position. Classic pincer movement. Thompson's smile widened. Predictable, just like the combat sim said. She quickly issued orders through hand signals. Another primitive human trait that proved invaluable when radio silence was needed. Her Marines split into smaller teams, abandoning conventional tactics for what seemed like chaos. They laid improvised traps using debris and simple explosives, created false movement patterns to confuse the Scarab's targeting systems, and used the urban environment in ways the hive mind couldn't predict. "They expect us to either stand and fight or retreat," Thompson explained to a fascinated Lumini elder as they moved between cover positions. "They can't understand that we might do both, neither, or something completely different." The elder's translator struggled to convey their response. "Your species remembers warfare, yet you use it to protect rather than conquer. We may have misjudged humans." A massive explosion rocked the street as second squad sprung their trap, using simple shake charges to collapse a building onto a Scarab formation. The aliens, expecting high-tech attacks, had no protocols for dealing with architectural warfare. "Misjudged is right," Thompson replied, checking her ammunition as more civilians were guided to safety. "Everyone sees our capacity for violence and assumes that's all we are. Truth is, being dangerous just means you can protect others from danger." As if to emphasize her point, she spun and fired in one smooth motion, her shotgun's flechettes shredding a Scarab that had tried to flank their position. The movement was pure instinct, honed by millions of years of evolution and thousands of hours of training. "Clear the area," she ordered, already moving to the next position. More civilians to save, more bugs to kill. Just another day at the office. Behind her, the saved Lumini watched in wonder as humans continued their deadly dance, bringing violence and salvation in equal measure. Dr. James Sullivan stood in the Normandy's secure lab, his sleeves rolled up as he examined holographic data streams from the captured Scarab drone. Behind him, Admiral Morrison and Carol watched as complex neural patterns danced across multiple displays. "It's beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way," Sullivan mused, manipulating a 3D model of the Scarab's neural architecture. "Their entire species thinks as one mind, but that's not even the most interesting part." He highlighted a section of the display. "Look at their evolution path." Morrison stepped closer, his experienced eyes scanning the data. "What am I looking at, Doc?" "Their technological advancement was perfectly linear," Sullivan explained, excitement creeping into his voice. "No false starts, no dead ends, no creative leaps. Every development followed logically from the last. It's like they're following a preset program rather than truly evolving." Carol's tendrils twisted in confusion. "Isn't that ideal? Pure efficiency in development." Sullivan shook his head, pulling up comparison charts. "Life isn't meant to be efficient. Look at Earth's evolutionary history. It's full of weird experiments, bizarre adaptations, and seemingly illogical developments. That messiness, that willingness to try strange solutions, is what makes biological evolution so powerful. And that's why they can't handle our tactics," Morrison concluded, beginning to understand. "They never had to deal with chaos during their development." "Exactly." Sullivan manipulated another display, showing footage from the ongoing space battle. Every species they've encountered followed the same basic pattern, evolving away from physical combat, developing energy weapons, creating perfect shield harmonics. The Scarab simply adapted to each new technology as it appeared. He pulled up combat data from Thompson's Marine Squad. But humans, we kept everything. Energy weapons. Sure, we developed those. But we also kept developing ballistic weapons, improving materials science, refining old combat techniques. We never abandoned anything that worked just because something better came along. Carell watched in fascination as Sullivan overlaid neural patterns from the drone with readings from human soldiers in combat. Your brainwaves during battle. They're incredibly chaotic. Yet there's a pattern to them. Pattern recognition in chaos. That's one of humanity's greatest strengths, Sullivan agreed. We can see order in randomness and create randomness in order. The Scarabs can't comprehend it. Their neural architecture is built on pure logic with no room for intuitive leaps. Morrison stroked his chin thoughtfully. So when our pilots fly on instinct instead of computer guidance, it short-circuits their prediction algorithms, Sullivan finished. They literally cannot compute human unpredictability. Every time we do something illogical but effective, their entire tactical database has to reorganize itself. He brought up a new display showing the Scarab Queenship's energy readings. But here's the real breakthrough. The more they try to adapt to our primitive tactics, the more processing power they have to divert from their collective consciousness. They're actually becoming less efficient the more they fight us. Carell's translator struggled to convey his mix of emotions. You're saying that the very things we considered primitive about humans, their unpredictability, their retention of obsolete weapons, their reliance on instinct, are actually advanced adaptations. Advanced isn't the right word, Morrison corrected, a slight smile playing across his weathered features. Natural is more like it. Humans never tried to become perfect. We just got really good at being human. Sullivan nodded enthusiastically. Every other species they've encountered tried to become more advanced by abandoning their evolutionary heritage. Humans, we took our primitive drives, our aggression, our protective instincts, our capacity for violence, and we refined them. We didn't eliminate our killing instinct. We learned to control it, to direct it, to use it in defense of others. A weapon is only as good as its wielder, Morrison mused, quoting an ancient military maxim. And humans had millions of years to become very good wielders indeed. The lab's displays updated with new combat footage, showing Marines adapting mid-battle to Scarab tactics, while the aliens struggled to form coherent responses to human unpredictability. That's humanity's gift to the galaxy, Sullivan said softly. We remembered what everyone else chose to forget. Sometimes you need a predator to protect you from monsters. Morrison's expression hardened as he studied the Queenship's data. And now we know exactly how to hurt them. Time to show these bugs why evolution favored mammals over insects. Lieutenant Hannah, Ghost Murphy, crouched in the shadows of the Queenship's twisted corridors, her squad of Special Forces operators positioned like coiled springs around her. The alien vessel's interior resembled a biomechanical cathedral designed by a mad architect. All sweeping arches of chitin and metal that seemed to pulse with dark energy. Remember, she whispered over the tactical net, they think in straight lines. We don't. She checked her modified battle rifle, loaded with specialized hollow-point rounds. Team Spectre, sound off. Reaper, in position. Shadow, ready. Wraith, weapons hot. Phantom, good to go. The plan was, by conventional military standards, insane, while the main fleet engaged the Scarab Armada in what appeared to be a desperate frontal assault. Murphy's team had slipped aboard the Queenship using technology that would have made their ancestors proud, electromagnetic cloaking combined with simple thermal blankets. Sometimes the old ways worked best. Control, this is Ghost, Murphy transmitted. We're in position. Beginning Phase 2. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through her comm. Understood, Ghost. The fleet is committed. Make it count. Murphy signaled her team forward. They moved like predators through the alien corridors, their movements a perfect blend of ancient hunting instincts and modern military training. The Scarab drones they encountered never saw them coming. Their sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and power signatures, were blind to simple ceramic knives and silenced weapons. 6 targets eliminated, reported Reaper. They're not even trying to hide their neural connection nodes anymore. It's like they can't conceive of physical infiltration. Their arrogance is our advantage, Murphy replied, consulting the bio readings on her heads-up display. The Queen's chamber should be 2 levels up. Remember, we're not just here to kill, we're here to create chaos. The team planted their special packages at key junction points, not high-tech explosives, but simple thermite charges. The Scarab's energy shields couldn't stop an exothermic reaction that could melt through their hull like butter. Contact. Shadow's warning came just as a patrol of elite guard drones rounded the corner. These were different. Bigger, more heavily armored, and carrying weapons that could reduce a human to atoms. Murphy didn't hesitate. Pattern Delta, she commanded, and her team scattered like leaves in the wind. The guard drones, programmed for formal combat protocols, couldn't track 5 targets moving in seemingly random, but actually carefully choreographed patterns. The firefight was brief and brutal. Human hollow-point rounds shattered chitin armor, while ceramic blades found weak points in alien joints. The guards' energy weapons carved beautiful but harmless patterns in the air, where humans had been half a second before. All clear, Wraith reported, retrieving his knife from a drone's neural cluster. But they'll have transmitted warning signals. Good, Murphy grinned behind her visor. Let them come. The more processing power they devote to finding us, the less they have for fleet coordination. They fought their way upward through the living ship, each engagement a lesson in why humanity's combat evolution made them unique. The Scarabs deployed increasingly complex defensive patterns, but couldn't adapt to humans who instinctively found the gaps in any formation. Finally, they reached the Queen's chamber, a massive spherical space filled with pulsing neural interfaces and twisted technological growth. The Scarab Queen herself was both beautiful and horrifying, a creature of perfect geometric symmetry that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human eye could process. I know why you came. The Queen's thoughts resonated directly in their minds, her first attempt at communication. You think destroying me will save the Lumini. But we are perfection. We are evolution's ultimate expression. Murphy chambered around in her rifle. That's where you're wrong. Perfect things don't evolve. They stagnate. She opened her tactical net to full broadcast, letting the Queen hear the chaos of human combat chatter from across the battlefield. Hear that? That's real evolution. Messy, unpredictable, and unstoppable. Chaos is inefficient. The Queen insisted. Order is power. Order is predictable. Murphy corrected, as her team moved into their final attack positions. And predictable things die. She keyed her calm. All teams, execute. Across the massive ship, thermite charges ignited. Human ships pressed their attack with renewed vigor, and in the Queen's chamber, 5 human predators proved why evolution had favored mammals over insects. The real chaos was just beginning. Admiral Jack Morrison stood before the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber, his dress uniform adorned with newly minted Lumini decorations that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. The chamber, once filled with whispers about humanity's primitive violence, now sat in respectful silence. 3 weeks ago, Morrison began, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. You called us killers. You weren't wrong. He paused, letting that sink in. But you forgot something important. What makes a weapon dangerous isn't its edge. It's the intent of the one wielding it. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing footage from the battle. Human ships performing suicidal maneuvers to protect Lumini civilian transports. Marines standing guard over evacuee camps. Special Forces teams extracting trapped civilians from behind enemy lines. The Void Scarabs failed. Morrison continued, not because our weapons were stronger or our ships faster. They failed because they couldn't understand why a species would risk death to save strangers. They couldn't compute self-sacrifice or protective instinct. They saw our capacity for violence as a weakness, never realizing it was our greatest strength. Carol, now sporting the rank markings of senior ambassador, watched as his fellow council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The footage changed to show Lieutenant Murphy's team in the final battle aboard the Queenship. The Scarab Queen's death had been neither clean nor elegant. Just 5 humans using everything from high-tech explosives to combat knives, fighting with desperate efficiency to reach their target. We didn't defeat the Scarabs because we were killers, Morrison explained. We defeated them because we remember why killing evolved in the first place, to protect what matters. Every predator on Earth learned that lesson millions of years ago. Humanity just had the good sense not to forget it. The chamber's displays shifted again, showing the aftermath. Human medical teams treating Lumini civilians, marine engineers helping rebuild destroyed infrastructure, warships converted to temporary housing for refugees. The galaxy is changing, Morrison continued. The Lumini have asked for human military advisors to help them develop defensive capabilities. 3 other species have already followed suit. They've realized that pure technological advancement without retained survival instinct is a path to extinction. He gestured to a group of Lumini diplomats, their bodies glowing with patterns that the translator rendered as pride and gratitude. But more importantly, they've learned what humanity has known all along. Being dangerous doesn't make you evil. Sometimes, being dangerous is exactly what you need to be to protect those who can't protect themselves. The Council's speaker, its ancient AI processing new concepts it had never considered, spoke. And if this power is misused, if humanity's protective instinct becomes conquest? Morrison smiled. That's the beautiful irony. The same evolution that made us dangerous also gave us empathy. We can kill because we understand death. We can protect because we understand fear. Every human who fought the Scarabs did so not because of orders or programming, but because they couldn't stand by while innocents suffered. He straightened his uniform, the Lumini decorations catching the light. So yes, we're killers. We're predators who built spaceships. We're primates who never lost their fighting edge. And we're exactly what this galaxy needs. Not conquerors, not perfect beings, but protectors who remember the old ways. The chamber erupted in discussion as Morrison stepped down from the podium. Carl met him at the bottom of the steps, his tendrils moving in patterns of deep respect. You've changed everything, the ambassador said softly. The galaxy will never be the same. Morrison watched as human and Lumini diplomats mingled, sharing stories and plans for the future. Change is good, he replied. It's how species survive. The Scarabs proved what happens when you chase perfection instead of embracing your nature. Above them, the chamber's displays showed newly commissioned human Lumini hybrid defense ships launching from orbital dockyards. Their designs combined advanced alien technology with humanity's primitive but proven weapons. Like humanity itself, they were neither purely civilized nor purely savage, but something unique. Protectors who remembered why teeth and claws evolved in the first place. The galaxy had called for help, and the killers had answered, but they had proved to be something far more important than mere warriors. They had proved to be guardians.